Hello. Thanks for taking time to study God's Word with me today. We continue our study of John 18:12 through 27, and we are looking at the first part of Jesus' trial and at Peter when he denies being a disciple of Jesus. Take a moment to read today's passage, paying particular attention to verses 15 through 18. Yesterday, we focused on the issue of fear and how misplaced fear can cause us to fall into sin. Peter denied being a disciple of Jesus, even though the person who asked that question was a slave girl who watched the door. This response out of fear started Peter down a path of adding on to his sin. After Peter's first denial, we are told in verse 18, "Now the servants and officers had made a charcoal fire because it was cold, and they were standing and warming themselves. Peter also was with them, standing and warming himself." Now, from a historical perspective, it makes perfect sense that a fire was needed in the courtyard. At this time of year, the air would have been cold at night, and Jerusalem is on a hill, so the wind could blow and the temperatures would call for a fire for those who were outside. The servants and the officers sent out to arrest Jesus are gathered around this fire to stay warm. These are the people who were working with the Pharisees and the other Jewish leaders to get rid of Jesus. And here's Peter, one of the disciples who was with Jesus at the garden, and he had even cut the ear off of one of those servants. But notice where we find Peter. Peter also was with them, standing and warming himself. John doesn't say Peter was by the people or near the people, nor does he say Peter was by the fire. Instead, he notes that Peter was with them, or with the servants and officers. That may seem like a small point, except in last week's passage, we had the moment where the enemies of Jesus had come to arrest him. Behind Jesus are his disciples, who Jesus is continuing to protect, and then across from him are the soldiers, the temple officers, and Judas, who was about to betray him. And John notes in verse 5 that Judas was standing with them. Judas' words and actions made it clear he was with the soldiers and officers, which put him outside of Jesus' authority. Now come back to Peter. He had already denied being a disciple once before, and now he is with the temple officers and the servants. He had rejected his identity as a follower of Jesus and was trying to blend in with this other group by being with them. I would argue that Peter was trying to fit in with those who were opposing Jesus. It made it easier for him to sin and deny Jesus again later because he had forgotten his identity. This leads me to applying the lesson to our own lives. If you remember, Jesus in chapter 17 is praying for his disciples and for us. And he says, we are not to be of the world, but we are sent to be in the world. So how do we interact with the world in a way that we can reach them with the gospel without being identified as being part of the world? Well, in 1 Corinthians 9, Paul says, "For though I am free from all, I have made myself a servant to all that I might win more of them. To the Jews I become as a Jew in order to win Jews. To those under the law I become as one under the law, though not being under the law myself, that I might win those under the law. To those outside the law, I became as one outside the law, not being outside the law of God, but under the law of Christ, that I might win those outside the law. To the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some. I do it all for the sake of the gospel, that I may share with them in its blessings." We must be sensitive to the people around us and meet them where they are at. We must interact and engage with the people around us without thinking and acting like the world. We must extend others grace, just as we have received grace from Jesus. We adapt our methods to the culture, while the content of our message, the gospel, never changes. My prayer is that you and I will continue to build relationships with the people in our lives, while maintaining our distinctiveness as being disciples of Jesus. May God bless you. May He bless you as you interact with those around you today.